Hey guys, James MC Reviews here. This is a video I definitely wasn't expecting to have on the slate this year, especially this early. I know I'm getting to this a bit later than a lot of other people, but I did still want to take some time to pay respect and pay tribute to Britt Allcroft, who unfortunately passed away in December of last year and was announced a couple weeks ago at the time of the recording of this. I don't think it's an over-exaggeration to say that this woman is responsible for creating so many childhoods, including my own. Like, obviously, Reverend Audrey is the one who wrote the original Thomas the Tank Engine books and, you know, is the sole creator of Thomas the Tank Engine, but Britt Allcroft is the one who propelled Thomas into the mainstream. She saw the, you know, creativity and the magic and the value in the Reverend Audrey's work and wanted to bring that world and those characters to life and share them with so many generations. And that's exactly what she did. And she created something so timeless and so meaningful to so many people. And it just exploded into this incredibly successful thing. It became huge in the UK. She brought it to American audiences with Shining Time Station, and it became huge over here as well. And it's still going all these years later. It's taken on many forms, it's evolved so far from where it started, and it's just insane that she is solely responsible for that. And even beyond how successful it's become, it's also been super impactful to several generations. Like, kids have grown up with these characters, grown up with these creative stories and these important life lessons, and they're now sharing it with their kids who will hopefully pass it on to everyone else. There's become an entire, like, adult fandom surrounding this series, filled with equally creative people doing their own, like, bits of work inspired by this series and these books and these characters, which is just absolutely insane. And it's just had such a huge impact on so many people. And I mean, speaking from personal experience, I know I haven't talked about it a lot. I mentioned it briefly, but, you know, I was a Thomas the Tank Engine nut as a kid. I still have all the VHS tapes that I used to watch over and over again. I don't have all of my wooden railway figures or trains that I used to play with. I gave a lot of those away, but I did keep my original James figure with the cars that are the letters that spell my name, and you could probably see that in the background of a lot of my older videos. But yeah, like, I was absolutely obsessed with Thomas when I was little. It meant so much to me. I resonated with all the characters. I was just engrossed in this world that they created, and it's, I think, one of the few kid shows that has stuck with me even now into, you know, my adulthood. You know, I've, over the years, like, into my 20s, I've fallen down many a nostalgia rabbit hole and revisited those original few seasons, and honestly, they do really hold up. I find them very relaxing and very charming. I appreciate how they were made with the, you know, the model work and the cameras and everything like that. And, you know, it just takes me back to a simpler, more innocent time in my life, I guess. And, you know, all of this stuff, these characters, this world, these stories, these morals that were instilled into me and so many others, all these valuable lessons and everything, none of this would be possible, and none of this would be as big and as impactful as it was if it weren't for Britt Allcroft and the talented people that she worked with to bring this series to life. So I will always be extremely grateful to her for that. So today I wanted to pay respects and give my thank yous to her by revisiting an aspect of Thomas that wasn't necessarily the best received when it came out. It was a movie that I've talked about before on this channel, but I wanted to revisit it with you know, a different perspective, and that is Thomas and the Magic Railroad. This was Thomas's first and only theatrically released film. This is Britt Allcroft's first and only directing credit. And even 25 years after its release, it is still looked at by a lot of the fandom with a lot of vim and vigor and just kind of rejection. In fact, when I first did my initial video talking about it, I talked about it with my friend Abby, and we were mostly just kind of making fun of it and just kind of like loosely talking about it, even though we both agreed that it wasn't really like that bad or as bad as people make it out to be. But I wanted to take a look at it again, not just, you know, from a more like adult, like critical perspective, but I also wanted to talk about an aspect of the movie that I didn't really touch on that much in my initial video, which was the director's cut. Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys who care already know all this information because this movie has been talked about to death, but basically, to give you the short version, Magic Railroad was very much Britt's baby, and her initial vision for the story was a lot different to what we saw in theaters. The story had even more of a focus on the human characters. It was told from Lily's perspective, played by Mara Wilson. It explored more of her kind of relationship with her grandpa, Burnett Stone. The trains had completely different voice actors to their theatrical counterparts. And there was a completely separate human villain named P.T. Boomer, played by Doug Lennox, who was a much major player in the story and was trying to get his hands on the Lost Engine to sell it for money and everything like that. But unfortunately, test audiences weren't very receptive to this version of the movie, so a lot of it had to be either cut out or just rewritten and changed. And when it came to theaters, people still didn't like it, and, you know, the reaction was what it was, and it, unfortunately, Britt took a lot of the hit from the movie's failure and ended up stepping down from her own production company, which was kind of a shame. And for the longest time, there were all these stories and rumors of like what the movie was supposed to be and whether or not a director's cut would even happen. And, you know, the original script was online for several years, and everyone thought that when the movie was released on Blu-ray for the 20th anniversary that we would get a proper director's cut in this, but unfortunately we only got deleted scenes. But the director's cut, the original scenes do exist to some capacity. Like I said, both in the deleted scenes in this and also the work print version of the movie that is online, which is what I watched. Now, obviously, when going over the work print, I'm not going to go over the fact that the voiceover sounds different in between scenes and the effects aren't finished and the green screen keying looks bad and everything like that, because that can't be helped. It's an unfinished, unreleased version of the movie. But I'm mainly going to be talking about like the changes in the story and the scenes that were cut out of the original. I do think this version is technically better in comparison to the theatrical, and it is slightly more coherent, but it's definitely not without its flaws, I don't think. I do like that this version, which it should since it's, you know, longer and has all the scenes put in, but I like that this version, you know, has a little bit more development for the characters. I like that it spends a little bit more time delving into Lily's relationship with her grandfather. You get a couple more interactions with them, because in the original cut, they didn't really, like, interact. He picks her up from the station, and then they just kind of go home and don't talk to each other much until the end. And they don't really have like any connection or chemistry. But here, like, she actually asks him questions. She tries to like form a bond with him, and he's just kind of not having it. And then you see it, so you actually see at several points in the movie why he is the way that he is, and like they show flashbacks to like him and Tasha's relationship, and they explain sort of like what happened with Lady. And in this version, Boomer is the one that destroyed lady, and it happened when they were kids, and he wasn't able to fix her before Tasha passed away and everything like that. And it hits a little bit harder than you know, the backstory in the original. Boomer in this movie is just kind of a cartoon villain. He isn't really all that menacing. He's just kind of like an asshole who wants money, and you know, he's going to these extremes, like trying to blow up the mountain to get it, to find the lost engine and everything like that. And you know, one of the reasons that he was cut out of the final movie was because test audiences thought he was too scary. And maybe it's just my cynical adult mind, but honestly, I don't really think he is all that. I feel like the main series has a lot more scary imagery than whatever this guy is. Speaking on the villains, I do think they probably could have integrated them a little bit better into the movie. Like, I mean, for one, Boomer just kind of like shows up at different points throughout the movie, and like there are points where you kind of forget that he's even in there. And with Diesel, like Diesel was already a very like minor figure in the original cut, but here he's like, again, barely in it, and you kind of have to remind yourself. And by the time it gets to the final chase where they're chasing them to the bridge and Boomer is riding on top of Diesel, it's like, it's one of those where I feel like it would have been a little bit more satisfying to, you know, see them actually conspiring together. Maybe have Boomer already know how to get to Sodor, and like secretly conspiring with Diesel on how to get rid of Stone and everything like that. So like when the two of them are chasing Thomas and Lady and Stone at the end, like it seems a little bit more, I guess, earned or more intense, and you know, now that they're officially teamed up or something. There are very long stretches where, you know, you don't see a lot of the trains, like it's a lot of just kind of talking. And overall, like, I don't think that this version, if it was released, would have been like the magical savior of this movie. I don't think, you know, audiences would have been more perceptive to this version than the version that we got. And I think that this probably could have used another couple rewrites, because like the dialogue is still very clunky, the plot is still pretty like needlessly overcomplicated, and you know, a lot of what people had a problem with is the fact that the focus isn't on the trains, it's on the humans. And even though this version adds a little bit more character and development to the humans, that's also not why so many people are there. Still though, it is kind of a shame that, you know, this version of the movie never properly saw the light of day, and that the movie that Britt set out to make was shit-canned and butchered by test audiences and studio interference, and that she ended up taking a lot of the fall for the reaction and everything like that. But again, just like I said in my initial video when I was talking about the theatrical cut, I honestly, like, genuinely do not think that this movie is as bad as like so many critics and people make it out to be. Like, the best thing I can say about it is that it's harmless. It's a harmless, a little strange bit of Thomas canon that, you know, one woman tried to, you know, make a certain way. It didn't go well, but ultimately there are far worse kids movies out there, and I mean, speaking in terms of hindsight, there's far worse bits of Thomas canon out there as well. So I think honestly the Magic Railroad is like the least of the least awful thing that that people have to worry about. But yeah, hopefully somewhere down the line, like I said, this version can at least see a proper, like, completed release to physical media, just so that it's out there and people can watch it properly. But, you know, if it never happens, like, at least we have the original, and at least we have the work print that's still available online, and you know, at least we have the show. At least we have the show, and we still have all these great stories and charming characters and important life lessons, and that will, regardless of the reaction to this movie and or how bad you might think it is, you know, that will always be, to me at least, that will always be Britt Allcroft's legacy. Is she is responsible for bringing these characters to life and instilling so many good morals and classic stories into so many kids, including myself. So, yeah. Britt, thank you for everything that you've done. I hope you rest easy, and thank you guys for watching.
Sometimes, all it takes is a little train engine and the spirit of the child within us to see the beauty in our lives and hope that we can always find it there.